10 years in the life of a young, growing family. It's a long time. A lot happens to people during that time. And for most of our lives, we remember what happens as we live as families for a good decade. With me in the studio here on this session of Aberjona Roundtable, the Purdy family. Pamela Chatterton Purdy, who has just written a marvelous book with the title Beyond the Baby Lift. With us are Wang Stephen Purdy and David Purdy. They are members of the family too, and just a little later in the program we're going to have still other members of the family with us up here. I want to welcome all of you.
Thank you.
It's a delight to have you here. David is minister of the Crawford Memorial United Methodist Church here in Winchester and has been so for 10 years, my colleague down the street. We've enjoyed being together on a number of occasions, and it's a delight to have all of you here. Usually it's just David on camera with me, right?
That's right.
And this time it's with the whole family. The 4 children of the family who are now grown up, and Pamela, mother, who is teacher, an artist, and now a writer. But you've written before.
This is the first book.
This is your first published book.
And probably the last.
The book is called Beyond the Baby Lift, and it is an important new publication of the Abingdon Press, and it is just coming out now. It's available here in Winchester in at least one of the bookstores.
At Bookends Bookstore.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about how all of this came about. The two of you, Pamela and David, were students once upon a time who were very interested in how the world was going. You wanted to have a family in this world, conditions being tough all around. You wanted to be a part of maybe the stability of the world as it shapes into the 21st century. And here you are now, quite a few years later, with 4 children.
Right.
Tell me something about the origin of this book
Well, we
idea.
were very much involved in the protest of Vietnam, the war, and we were very active in civil rights, and we decided that we would put our money where our mouth was, so to speak, and adopt across racial lines. It seemed that busing was a big issue, but in some ways that seemed phony to me, to bus children into a neighborhood. Why not have them live there? And if adoption, if there were children out there that needed homes, why not adopt? And why not adopt across racial lines? We had already had 2 biological daughters. We had adopted Ronald in 1971. Everything had gone so well and so smoothly. We didn't hesitate to adopt again. And in 1975, when the fall of Saigon occurred, we had already put in for another American black child, and agencies all over the country were being phoned by Friends of Children of Vietnam to see if there were applicants who could readily take a child without all the lengthy adoption studies and so forth, which we had already done because we had one adopted child. And so we had to consider an overseas adoption at that time. And it was just an overnight happening. It was just panic time. Children were being thrown on airplanes in Saigon and flown out of there by the thousands. And we phoned them back and said, yes, we would take a Vietnamese child, but we preferred to have a black Vietnamese child because we already had 1 black son, and we felt that it was possible that a Vietnamese child might even be more acceptable in this country than a black child. And therefore we wanted some closer identity with that whole issue.
And there you were, being phoned one day and told that an agency had a child for you. Could you move very quickly? And in one sense you were psychologically prepared, as you've just said, and yet in another way this came as a very sudden kind of offer.
I'm not sure we were really prepared in any way. The language barrier and the cultural differences we knew would be an additional object to surmount, and we had not a bed, we did not have clothing, we had nothing. It was a 3-day placement. We received a phone call one day, and in 3 days Wang Stephen was being flown to us.
Right.
So there was a lot of adjusting to do, and but we were excited about it, and we just felt that why not go with it? It's something excitingly positive that we can do. that counteracts some of the tragedy that had occurred in Vietnam.
In a sense, then, you were saying, why not?
Right.
But there you were, Stephen. You were a little kid coming out of a war zone, or what had been a war zone. It had been quiet for a little while, except that it was suffering from the aftermath of full-scale warfare. Do you remember anything from that time when you were 4 and 5 years old? What sorts of memories do you have? Because your need, your panic level must have been higher than your parents here.
I'm
You remember any of that?
coming over here on the plane. I don't remember the plane ride itself, but I remember all of us getting into they all told us they're like choosing us to go.
Yeah.
They chose a lot of those kids to go. They didn't say where. I don't know where. They said, you know, they just chose a lot of kids and put them all in one place, and next thing you know, we're aboarding on the plane.
Yeah, yeah. It's the kind of situation where I suppose experiences can be so frightening and so traumatic you tend to forget them. I don't remember a lot of the wild.
Well, it was a long time ago also.
Yeah, right. But I think we all remember some things that happened to us before we're 5, and you tend to remember sometimes the more pleasant things or the more exciting things. Maybe some of your recall of getting food, of getting a warm place in a room or something like that. It was important to you. David, you were prepared too, in a sense, psychologically for this whole experience. But how much of the reality of the Vietnam situation was in your mind as you got the news? Were you thinking of Vietnam, or were you thinking primarily of family? What was going through your mind at that time?
I think probably we were thinking more of family than Vietnam. We were prepared psychologically, I think, only in the sense that we had had another home study, as the adoption agencies do. We were thinking 6 months down the road or something like that from the time of the adoption study. And it was within just a couple of months, I think, that the phone call came. The fact that we had already adopted once gave us some precedent, and so in that sense we were psychologically prepared. But as Pam says, the dramatic differences between culture, language, and so on didn't allow us to be prepared as much as we would have wanted to be or might have been.
Yeah.
In addition to that, because the Friends of Children of Vietnam agency was located in Colorado, we got very little support from them. They were just trying to get rid of these kids, as it were.
It was an emergency time for them, too.
That's right. Everybody was in a kind of crisis crunch, and they were attempting to get these kids out into homes, and so they couldn't be supportive or helpful in helping us deal with the crisis, the cultural barriers and the language crisis and so on. There were a number of children from Vietnam who were adopted by families in the Boston area. We were living in Middleborough at the time, which is 35, 40 miles southeast of Boston, and very few of the Vietnamese kids ended up in that area. So we were very much alone geographically. We made a number of efforts to seek out other families who had adopted Vietnamese children, but they're very few and far between. And so I think we felt very isolated in this particular experience.
Isolation, which maybe helped to a certain extent, in that you were thrown on your own resources as a family, mother, father, sisters, brother, and now brother is plural. There you were, the 6 of you, making it on your own, as it were, and kind of inventing the important experiences, is what you have to do in a family anyway.
I wanted to say, you asked me 2 parts of that question before, and the other one had to do with we thinking Vietnam War and so on, or were we thinking family? And I said we were thinking family, at least I was probably, because in adoption of the sort that Pam and I have done, we were not trying to make political statements. We were making family decisions. There is a kind of political statement that gets made when you do that.
Well, it's sort of a kickoff experience,
right,
a trigger.
That's
something.
right. But our intent was not to show the world anything or to demonstrate something to the world that other people ought to do. We simply felt that this was a moral decision that we needed to make as a family. And so that's what we were thinking about.
Time passes, 12 years since that time. And perhaps it's well that we don't remember everything, or at least don't spend a lot of time thinking about a lot of things. But things have happened here in Winchester, things along the way that happened outside the family that were important. A few years ago, when you were in 6th grade, you were attacked in a local store, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much of that do you remember? You must have.
Oh, I remember that clearly.
You remember that whole thing. You know?
Mm-hmm.
You crossed the street, somebody got angry with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just seeing you, seeing the color of your skin, perhaps?
No, I don't know if it was that. It was just,
But what did he call you?
okay, well, yeah, he called me some racial names, but what just seeing me crossing the street didn't make him go and forward and hit me. We just gave each other some dirty looks because he was about to hit me when I was crossing.
He was ready to hit somebody anyway.
Well, he was
You
going a
were
little too
convenient
fast,
target.
yes.
Yeah.
And so I ran across the street, and then we just stared at each other, and I kept on walking into the store, and he follows me in there, and that's when he assaulted me.
Yeah. Now, you've been aware of racism before that, I'm sure.
Yeah, just a little name calling
Yeah.
all through grammar school, but never something that
Never
harsh.
anything like that,
No.
where an adult gets ugly.
No.
Yeah. That's a tough kind of situation. And yet, there's healing that goes on within the family, too, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the interesting things about the book, and the book is Beyond the Baby Lift, and the author here is Pamela Chatterton Purdy, the mother. One of the very important things is that the healing of the family is stressed in a very realistic way. Well, now, we want to have the other members of the family come in for a moment, if we may, before we go on. And I would like to have the other members of the family come up while I'm reading a section of this book written by Pamela. I'm going to read a part here about the production of Godspell at the Crawford Church just a few years ago. This is Pamela writing now. I sat wearily in a front pew, camera in hand. I knew this dress rehearsal would be the only time to get pictures. Our youth group was putting on Godspell, and all 4 Purdy children were in it. Ronald had been cast as Jesus and was doing a fabulous job. His full voice was perfect for the part. Having worked on the choreography for many plays, I'd been smart enough to step aside on this one. Our ministerial assistant was doing a fine but uphill job as director, and a super lay member was handling the choreography. What was it the director had said last week? This is the first play I've worked with that somehow there has been no chemistry, no pulling together in a cohesive group. Stephen's negative attitude was a big part of the problem. Ronald, Jess, and Kristen had complained about it daily. However, several others also had contributed to the splintered feeling. Lights were being tested all around me. Jessica had a terrible sore throat and was looking for her lozenges. I wondered why I'd insisted that all 4 participate. It was a continual job, trying to persuade Stephen to relate to the rest of the family in any meaningful way. Okay, kids, let's begin, the director called out. Jessica, do the best you can on your solo. Save your voice for opening night. And the play began with Prepare Ye, and I was swept away with the music. My biggest sin must be pride, because every time one of my 4 said a line or sang a solo, a glow came over me. Kristen came playfully down the aisle in a red hat and blue feather boa, singing Turn Back, O Man. Jessica managed her day-by-day solo. Her face was so beautiful and so sensitive. How ironic to see Ronald with his striped suspenders and a Superman S on his chest. That very first Halloween, 2 days after his arrival, we had dressed him as Superman, now a black Jesus. It was so symbolic. Stephen appeared. Father, give me my share of the property. I had known he was cast as the prodigal son, but now I thought how fitting. The narrator read on. So he divided up his estate between the 2 of them. Before very long, the younger son collected his belongings and went off to a distant land. Stephen, pantomiming the whole thing, something at which he certainly had enough early practice, jumped up and straddled the board that bridged two sawhorses. His acting was fantastic as he stuffed his face and swung his legs in ecstasy. His leopard print pajama bottoms and General Hospital shirt were comical. Why had he said earlier that evening, "This play is dumb. It's the last play I'll ever be in"? He was wonderful. He went on, "My father's hired men have more food than they can eat, and here I am dying of hunger." Well, there we are, the fragment of this marvelous book. And incidentally, if you read no other book this year, this is a good one to read. Now, I want to welcome Kristen, Jessica, and Ron. It's nice to have you on camera. Nice to have you here in the studio. Okay, you're part of the family too. What kinds of things do you remember from this, let's say, the 10-year period that you've been here in Winchester? It's long enough to stretch back. Who wants to go first?
Things about Stephen?
Yeah, well, think about all of it. You know, you're all part of the family, not just about Stephen, but things that happened during that time.
Well,
I remember things before that more clearly. I
Do
think.
you really?
Yeah.
Okay, like,
Well,
such as?
Well, I guess the time that I remember the most, for me, it's in the book, is the time when we were in the Chinese restaurant. And we lived in Middleborough at the time.
So now we're talking about
And-
11 years ago, maybe.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, right before we moved here.
This is an important memory then, if you've got it
For me,
clearly
yeah,
in your head.
yeah.
Okay, go on.
Because I guess it was one of the first times that I was really intimidated, and I could really feel the violence of somebody else's hatred towards someone because of the color of their skin. I didn't understand racism at that time, but just briefly, the incident was we were in a Chinese restaurant, and someone was obviously didn't understand the nature of our family and started calling them names and intimidating them. And they were just little. I mean, you guys were... Yeah, it was in the bathroom. You guys were really small. And, you know, my father said, well, let's step outside. And of course, you know, in all the movies, you know, when they step outside, they have a big fight and everything.
Right.
So we were
So that was
really...
going through your mind,
Yeah,
too.
and we were, you know, I didn't understand at all what his problem was about our family. All I knew was that he in some way resented us because of the makeup of our family.
Yeah.
And I did not understand racism at all. It wasn't even, they tried to explain it to me and why some people don't like other people because of what they look like.
Mhm.
And that was just something foreign to me.
Okay, yeah. Very negative kind of experience, obviously, and yet something that maybe strengthened the bonds among you, too, the six of you pulling together. Even though you were too young at the time to maybe know what was going on.
Yeah.
Certainly the story was told later, right?
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay, so you've been in school, you've been around situations where other racial incidents were occurring. You could draw then on the strength that sort of developed at the time that you were discussing maybe this incident, building sort of on experience after experience.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about later years, more recent things that are within your own memories very clearly. Kristen, you want to?
Jessica.
Jessica, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I remember very recently, I'm a freshman in college now, and a friend of mine at school, this was like one of the first days at school, and I was talking to her, and no, Stephen had called on the phone, and I was talking to him on the phone, and I had to go somewhere. I said, Kathy, take the phone, my friend. And so she was talking to Stephen, and then they hung up. And she's like, oh, he sounds really nice and everything. Introduced me to him. And I was like, oh, you know, he's kind of cute, you know, stuff like that. She's like, is he, you know? And so I said, yeah, I have a picture of him. And I got my mother's book, and I showed the picture of him on the back of the book. And she looked at me like just incredulously, and she said, you would set me up with a black person? And I just couldn't believe what I said. What? And she said it again, and I was like, this is my brother. I said,
Yeah.
you know,
You
he's
know,
not.
Some people's experience or comprehension, they just can't track
Yeah.
you at that point. You're thinking, hey, what's so different about this? He's my brother.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't even, it blew my mind. And I said, I said, "Are you serious? You really mean what you're saying?" And she was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I would never go out with somebody who had a different color skin." Okay. And I said, "Just for that reason alone?" And she's like, "Yeah."
And there you were, confronted with racism.
And I got so mad.
Yeah. Ron, how about you? You've been, of course, identified in a sense with your brother in a different way.
Yeah. I can remember in high school, one of the things that was going on, because all four of us were in the high school at one time, all of us were there together, that lots of things that would happen between one of us and some other kids in the school, because we're all in the same family, like, I don't know, people would maybe ask me about something that would happen with one of my brothers or sisters, or we'd all get kind of linked together. It's because there are so many of us in the school at one
Important
point.
experience then for the whole school.
Yeah.
Right. They had to do some learning too. Okay. Now we're going to have some pictures of the family. More pictures of Kristen and Jessica and Ron and Stephen and Pamela and David. We're going to do that for just a few minutes here, and then we'll have a few minutes left for wrap-up. Thank you very much. I wish we had more time for this conversation. Your stories are just beginning here.
This particular picture was taken in 1975. It was 2 days after Huang Stephen's arrival at Logan Airport, and we were living in Middleborough at the time. This is a recent photograph that Abingdon requested to be taken for the back of the book. It's on the jacket of the book along with the 1975 photo of Stephen and myself. They wanted the juxtaposition of the two ages from beginning to present day. This picture was taken in late August 1975. There had been hurricane-force winds on Cape Cod, and this was in the backyard of our summer home. The children were screaming and running around in the wind and climbed up into this tree, and I had to go get my camera and take a quick picture. Just thought it was such fun. This is a very early photograph of Huang Stephen. He had lost a couple of front teeth. But the interesting thing about this picture is that he was so enamored of football from the beginning that he cut this picture out of a magazine and actually framed his head inside this helmet and presented me with this photograph. I just love it. This is a pen and ink drawing that I did of Stephen, Huang Stephen, when he was 5. Much of his difficulty in adjusting to this particular culture came about at bedtime when in Vietnam he was used to sleeping on a straw mat, and there were no spaces under the straw mat to scare him, and he decided that the closet was a much more secure environment for himself, and he literally set up house inside this tiny closet and would squirrel himself away. Sometimes in the hottest weather he would be inside this closet and would sleep in there and with a full light on. Quite frightened, but I was amazed how early his dreaming was actually in English, and I could hear him crying out in the middle of the night, and I would rush in, and there he would be with a light on and quite frightened. But there were so many things to adjust to from Vietnam and all he had been through that we decided if this really was a more comfortable environment for him, and it did seem to help, that who are we to say it wasn't the right thing for him to do. This drawing was done for an illustration for the chapter examining room number 4. We had taken Huang Stephen to the doctor for a routine checkup, and he had been quite frightened by a cross on the wall when we entered this examining room, and he did not want to go in. We finally got him in. He sat up on the examining table and mimicked a crucifix using his own body and hanging his head, looked at us and said no. Then sat in a lotus blossom position, the palms of his hands up on both knees, and looked at me after a few minutes and shook his head yes. And we were clear then that what the adoption agency had told us was true, that he was from a Buddhist background. But what was so fascinating about this was that his hands floated up from his knees and he seemed to go into some kind of a trance. And I asked him what he was doing, and he said, "Touching me friends, Vietnam." And I said, "How can you possibly touch your friends in Vietnam?" And he said, "Hands touch air, air touch friends in Vietnam." And I thought that was quite phenomenal for a child of 5 to be as sensitive as that, to try and connect with his past in such a way. This photograph was taken in London, England, one summer when we made a pastoral exchange with a Methodist minister in Muswell Hill. He came to Winchester and we went to his parsonage, and we had a fabulous summer touring Europe, and it's one of the fondest family memories we'll have, I'm sure. This is one of my favorite photographs of Kristen. She was a senior in high school when this was taken for the yearbook. This next one is of Ronald, and this is also his senior picture from Winchester High School. And then we have, of course, Jessica, and this was her senior picture. And the next one is of Stephen at Valley Forge Military Academy, and this, of course, is one of my favorite photographs, and he's in full uniform. Now, if you folks will remember, there was a little guy in a helmet some pictures ago, and this is Stephen as an adult at the Valley Forge Military Academy and on the football team, and now he's, of course, on the Bridgewater State football team, both varsity and junior varsity, and it looks like his dreams are becoming a reality. This family photograph was taken in the Winchester Fells on a beautiful October day. The picture was done because we do a Christmas card every 4 or 5 years, and this particular year, all 4 Purdy children were in the high school. Kristen on the left was a senior. Hoang, Stephen, and Jessica, who are in the middle, were both freshmen, and Ronald, who's seated on the ground, was a sophomore. This is a particularly precious photograph to me, and it's a way of winding up all the photographs that I've brought today. I think it's a nice culmination of family portraits that I have collected over the years.
Stephen, what kind of community looks good to you, the kind of community where you want to live after you graduate from college and go to work? Do you want to live in a big city someplace?
Yeah, in a big city.
Okay, why?
There's more people and there'll be more variety of people.
Greater variety. Okay.
So there'll be different kinds of people.
Yeah.
So there won't be just one standout.
All right. And how about your brother and sisters? Maybe the same for them?
I have no idea. I'm not too sure.
Oh, you're not going to talk to them?
No, I can't say about that.
Ah, all right.
Ask them.
Smart brother. Well, I wish we had more time to go on discussing with you. And Pamela Chatterton-Purdy, thank you for writing the book.
Thank you.
Again, I recommend it as the book to read this year for certainly those of us in Winchester. It gives that lovely dimension of the human experience as we grow in families and as we struggle with the real world.
And I think people who read the book will realize it isn't just about racism per se. For as many racial incidents as there have been incredible, numerous, supportive, wonderful people who have been there to embrace us as a family. And these incidents that occur certainly are very painful. And sometimes the pain gets you down, but then you have to stop and think about all those supportive people that there really are out there. And it keeps you going.
You've written a human story about human problems that happen to have a racial cast to it part of the time, but you have certainly indicated what the strengths of a family are and what individualism, in a sense, costs us, the price that we have to pay to be the kind of people we are. David, I want to thank you for...
Well, thank you for having us.
For being a colleague, for being here in town, for being the minister of a very marvelous congregation. Stephen, thanking you for being yourself, and carrying on, for being so candid in these many situations. I wish we could ask what's happened to all of you since this book has come out, but that's another show for another time.
Right.
I want to thank, of course, Jessica and Kristen and Ron, too, for being a part of the program today. I wish you well. You're going to be going back to school now. I wish you all the best for this coming year. And for you, Pamela Chatterton-Purdy, I hope you have success with still another book. this demands a sequel if you have the strength.
Another 10 years.
This has been Aberjona Roundtable. I'm Chuck Reinhardt, your host. It's been a delight having the Purdy family with me here, and I hope that you will come to the Roundtable again. See you later.